Eddie, is that Jimmy's ring you're wearing? Mm-hmm.
Motorbiking. Motorbiking.
Adventure Radio with Billy Biketruck.
Motorcycling.
Hello and welcome to Adventure Radio. I'm Billy Biketruck. This is the show that talks adventure, motorbikes and travel.
If you gotta go motorbike riding.
Coming up, we have got a very special guest. This is a guy who drove a car at 130 mile an hour in reverse. This is a man who drives trucks for a living, but not any truck. We're talking race trucks. I'm Billy Ward, Adventure Radio, and now we've got a two-wheel trivia teaser for you. Now, get this. We're going to give you the answer at the end of the show. Which British group had to change their album title to Two Wheels Good after the UK title was deemed unusable in America? It was called Two Wheels Good because it had a motorbike on its cover. There's a big clue for you. But who were they, and what was the album called here in the UK? The Adventure Radio Show, talking about adventure, travel and motorbikes. So today we have got an absolute special guest. This guy, we've been trying to get him, I've been trying to get him for ages. He's a real character, he's good looking, he's suave. He's a man who was in the motorcycle racing game many years ago, but luckily enough been able, the kind of guy who stayed in that profession and is still making a good living out of it. We gave you a few clues earlier on. Started his career with the likes of Barry Sheene, raced and partied with the likes of Mick Doohan and Wayne Gardner. If you were a big audience sitting in this room now, you'd be putting your hands together for the lovely, the adorable Mr. Steve Parrish. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Billy. Lovely to see you. Now, I know you're a liar, all of that, but that's very kind of you to say. But I don't know about a good living, but you're absolutely right. I am now 42 years without a proper job, and I call it, I'm still going to therapy to say the word job and work, but love what I do, and it was a great profession to be involved with and to still stay involved with.
Well, for someone who's been, you know, a lot of people say that making a living in motorbikes, in people's dream of working with motorbikes, not many people can manage to do it, particularly racing motorbikes. I mean, there's only 3 winners, really, isn't there? There's only a podium.
Yeah, you're right. And even second, they say, is first to the losers. And it is all very much about winning. But it's also very, very dangerous. So I think sometimes the danger factor makes you enjoy it in that there is so much exhilaration that comes from it. I mean, sat on the start line at the Isle of Man TT races is the most nerve-wracking thing I have ever done in my life, and I can't imagine what it's like for the mums and dads and the wives and the kids and things like that. But the excitement that it gives you, and when it's done, it's a bit like exercise. It's kind of nice having done it. It's not so good doing it in some ways.
Yeah, well, I want to actually pick your brains about the TT. The TT is in June this year, and there's a whole lot of interesting changes that have gone on in the TT in terms of who's racing what bikes and that. But before we do that, let's hark back to yesteryear. I mean, for those people who maybe don't know, I mean, you were a very, very good mate of Barry Sheene. Mm-hmm. I mean, the world's, the British face of motorcycle racing in the 70s and the 80s, Barry Sheene, the George Best of the era, if you like, in motorcycle terms. What was it like being his mate, and not just being his mate, a racer in your own right, like racing with him?
Well, he was the guy that had the target on anyway to beat, so he was my mate, but also he was the person that you had to beat, because if you beat Barry Sheene, generally you won the race, and I did on occasions, but he had so much self-belief in what he was doing, and I can remember on odd occasions I was winning a race and leading a race with a lap to go, thinking, I've got it. Flipping last corner, Sheene would come past, and you know why? I think he thought, well, if Stavros, which was my nickname, he nicknamed me Stavros from Steve Parrish, and he would pass me on the last corner, thinking full well that I know I can beat Steve Parrish. I think I was his kind of gauge to know I could push the limits a bit more. But it was wonderful times. We, by comparison, we earned a lot of money, not like sportsmen of this era, but nevertheless, it was far better than what I was, an agricultural engineer as such. I did an apprenticeship for that. So I was earning quite a lot of money. I was travelling the world. I was living in a paddock of great riders, Giacomo Agostini's and Kenny Roberts and people like that. There was lots of pretty girls around, and we just had an absolute ball. I was a dog in a butcher shop.
You're listening to Billy Biketruck on Adventure Radio. Uh-oh, it's Billy Biketruck on Adventure Radio. He's a great big scouser.
But you raced, or if you didn't race, you certainly partied with the biggest names that we've ever seen. I mean, like the Randy Mamolas, the Mick Doohans. I mean, it must have been incredible being around all them people.
It did, and it got even better because, of course, Barry Sheen introduced me to George Harrison, so I got to meet all the Beatles at the time, and George Harrison actually sponsored me for a year, signed a cheque for £50,000 in 1978, said, there you go, Steve, go off and do a bit of racing, and that was a bit of pocket change to him, which I guess £50,000 would be about £500,000 nowadays. It bought me 2 motorcycles, a truck, and ran the team, and then Eric Idle had come along and watched. So all the TV celebrities and famous pop stars and people like that would turn up. Then, of course, there was the movie that was made at the time, Silver Dream Racer, with all those stars in it. So it was a tremendous time, and you look back on it. But, of course, there were downsides because people were dying and people were getting injured, and it was horrible on that side of it.
Yeah, because, I mean, if you think of racing today, it's certainly not sanitised. I mean, it's still, you know, we know people still die. Sadly, some, you know, Simoncelli, for example, not too far away. And but in your day, they were dying like right, left, and centre.
Yeah,
I mean, the bikes, you couldn't ride the bike. From research that I've done, them bikes were them 500 bikes were practically unrideable.
Yeah, they were like switches, really. It was a 2-stroke 500cc, which produced back then probably 140, 50 horsepower, which was a lot considering it was on a little skinny tyre that was made out of, I don't know, shoe soles or something. The grip wasn't there. The brakes weren't that good. But what killed people wasn't so much the bikes were, they called them the unridables, but you could manage to tame them. But the sad thing was that speed never killed anyone. It's deacceleration, and you hit objects because there was Armco barriers close to the track. In fact, in a lot of tracks we went to, there was trees, there was houses. There wasn't all the protection to slow down, and so if you fell off, you hit something fast, and then you stopped quickly, and then sadly you died, or you broke your legs, or you broke this. So that was what was going on. And of course, protective clothing was nothing like. My leathers dropped to the floor like a set of pyjamas. There was no plastic in the elbows and the knees and things like that. The boots were like wearing Wellingtons.
Now, I remember watching riders on the start line on video clips and that, and they were nearly always wearing a Bell helmet. There was Bell, and it was always, you could see them moving it around. It'd be moving around on their head. It wouldn't fit the way a helmet would today.
Because it's one shell that you packed to, you know, whatever you did in there, put some tissue paper in it or something like that. And the gloves were like golf gloves. So whenever you crashed, and I could, and not that you'd want to see that, but if I took my top off here and even my trousers off, which I'm not going to do, I am covered in burns where I slid down the road and it wore through the leather and burnt my elbows and my hips and shoulders and all that kind of thing. And that was often the worst thing, the agony and pain you went through because you were sliding down the road and it was taking all your skin off.
Steve Parrish, it's an absolute pleasure to be chatting to you. You're an absolute star. I'm so privileged to be talking to a legend, a real legend, not just a legend of the racing era, but right the way through the whole industry, like still out there doing the whole thing in the bike industry. It's great to talk to you. And if there was a big audience here, we'd all be clapping and saying, thank you, Mr. Steve Parrish.
It's been my pleasure.
Hey, who's that over there on Adventure Radio? Why, it's Billy Biketruck. Watch out, girls. He might want to kiss you.
Welcome back. You're listening to Billy Biketruck on Adventure Radio. Now, every week we're going to try and do something really cool relating to motorcycles and music. So, cast your mind back. This is way, way back. But remember the Stranglers? Remember the 70s? Now, I don't know if you're aware of it, but Jean-Jacques Burnel, the kickboxing bad boy of punk, well, he released a solo album called Euroman Cometh. And it featured, get this, and it used for the rhythm track the ticking over of his own motorcycle, Burnell's 750cc Triumph Bonneville T140. How cool is that? How deep are we going to go? Manufactured by Meriden Cooperative. Get this, check it out. Listening to Billy Biketruck on Adventure Radio, and that was Jean-Jacques Burnel and his motorbike. Earlier on we gave you a trivia teaser, right? I hope some of you got it, but let me just go through it again. Which British group had to change their album title to Two Wheels Good after the UK title was deemed unusable in America? It was called Two Wheels Good because it had a motorbike on its cover, but who were they and what was the album called here in the UK? Remember Prefab Sprout? And do you remember what the issue was? In the UK, they called it Steve McQueen. And over in the States, they couldn't do that because it was breaking copyright. And the Steve McQueen estate wouldn't allow them to actually name the album Steve McQueen. They had to rename it Two Wheels Good. Well, that's it from Adventure Radio. That's it from Billy Biketruck on this week's show. Tune in next time to hear more adventure, travel and motorbikes with our very special guest, an icon in adventure travel, the charming Mr. Charlie Borman, where you'll get the chance to ask a few questions yourself. Will there be a new Long Way Up? What was it like working with Ewan McGregor? Find out this and more at the Adventure Radio Show next time.
Come here